Hello everybody, it's Randy Selzer here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to review the real estate activity in the Greater Toronto area over the last 12 months, over 2020. And I'm going to offer you a prediction of where I think the market is headed in 2021. Well, 2020 was certainly an unusual year. I don't think anybody in the world could have predicted that we'd be entering into a worldwide global pandemic known as COVID-19 at the beginning of last year, but certainly it happened. The real estate market began normally enough in January and February, and then in the middle of March, COVID hit, and of course it was a shock to the world's economic system. We had a huge drop-off, basically a drop-off a cliff in real estate activity for about 6 weeks from basically the middle of March through the end of April, and nobody knew where we were headed, whether we were going to have a crash. I actually predicted that we were going to have a soft market for the balance of the year. And boy, was I wrong. After 6 weeks, the market began to pick up again. And then against all expectations, it took off. It became one of the strongest, actually the third strongest real estate year in the history of the Toronto Real Estate Board. And we had unbelievable sales activity taking place where prices actually ended at the end of the year, ended up 15%. And activity was through the roof, especially for detached homes. And this in a background of COVID-19. So how could that be? Well, I think when we take a look at it now in retrospect, in hindsight, we can see that it's largely interest rate driven. Interest rates have been so low over the past year, where nowadays you can get a 5-year closed mortgage for around 1.6%, roughly 1.5%, which is so cheap, it's basically free money for anyone who wants to buy real estate these days. And I hate to use this word, but it seems like the ultra low interest rate has trumped the economic effects of the coronavirus. So despite the fact that many people have lost their jobs, many people have been laid off, despite the fact that we've been into and out of and back into lockdown a number of times, there's certain industries in the province that have just been devastated by COVID. I'm talking about the restaurant business, the hospitality industry, travel and tourism. There's many industries that have just gotten hammered by this COVID-19 situation. However, it seems enough of us are left who are still employed and can still get a mortgage, so that people have just gone out and bought houses like there's no tomorrow. They are still, as of this date, I'm recording this in February of 2021, people are snapping up houses. There's bidding wars left, right, and center. Not so much for condos. Condos is a special situation, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the housing market in general is just on fire. So let's talk a little bit about the condo market. The condo market diverged from the rest of the real estate market towards the middle of last year, and it's definitely been softer than houses, and I think it's specifically directly related to COVID-19. A lot of people bought condos. Well, let's step it back a bit. A lot of people bought condos as an investment to rent them out, and a number of things took effect throughout the year that changed the equation for those investors. The first thing that happened back in the last spring was that the government, I think rightly, banned short-term rentals, the Airbnb sort of situation, as a measure to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And that affected a lot of investors because they no longer had access to that very lucrative short-term rental income. Secondly, I think you've got just basically a psychological situation where a lot of people who are bought condos, perhaps smaller, newer condos, and feel just cooped up. They can't go out, they can't go out for dinner, they can't go out to shows, they can't do all the lifestyle type of things that they were promised they would be able to do. And couple that with the fact that people are uncomfortable being in close quarters with in a large building where some people could have COVID. They're uncomfortable with pressing the buttons in the elevator. And I think a lot of people made a decision that instead of living in a small condo, they'd rather buy a house, even if it involved moving further out where commuting came into effect. Plus the whole work from home situation. A lot of people are not required to work in their offices downtown anymore. And if they're able to work from home, they might as well be living out in the burbs somewhere where they can have a nice house. Couple that with the fact with the ultra low interest rates, and that has created, it's basically a real estate frenzy right now. With detached homes and semis and townhouses, where you're seeing, especially detached, are going 100,000 or 200,000 or 300,000 over the asking price. Ridiculous bidding wars on houses. Not so with condos right now. I happen to think that the situation with condos is temporary. It's 100% because of COVID. And now that the vaccines have been produced and are being distributed, a lot of things are going to come back, things such as immigration into Canada, which has been basically stopped for the last 9 months or so. I think you're going to see that come back, and a lot of those people tend to move into condos or apartments first. And also international students, which have basically, they've been canceled. They've been nowhere for the last almost a year. And I think you're going to see them start to come back, trickling back into Canadian universities over the next little while. So I think the situation with condos is going to turn around. I really do. And this is probably a perfect time to buy a condo. There's no bidding wars, or very few bidding wars, unlike with houses where it is just nuts right now. So where do I predict that the market is headed? I think, first of all, interest rates, they may creep up a little bit. And this is just news that breaking news from today, where a banker friend of mine said that there's rumblings out there that the government has finally figured out that maybe the real estate market is a little too hot, and they may jack up interest rates a little bit, but we're still looking at historic lows for mortgage rates right now. And so that may affect us a little bit going forward, but I think the other underlying things are going to stay in place. I think the economy has proven to be pretty resilient in spite of all the job losses. And I think you're going to see people continue to pile into real estate for the balance of 2021. The real estate board, the Toronto Real Estate Board, came out with their prediction. They're predicting that prices are going to go up by 10% in 2021. I think that's too conservative. I think you're going to see somewhere between 15 and 20% increase in prices throughout the course of the year overall. And again, I think condos will play catch up. In 3 or 4 months, I think you're going to see activity really pick up with condos. So it's a very bullish forecast. Despite the global pandemic, here we are. The GTA is still on fire when it comes to real estate. New projects, new launches of high-rise condos have been selling out within days. Again, there's bidding wars. People are moving further out. They're moving out to places like Hamilton and Stony Creek and Kitchener and Cambridge. And there's bidding wars everywhere you look because they're willing to make that commute, or they're willing to work from home, happy to work from home, and therefore there's bargains to be found in these outlying areas. So anyways, thank you for coming back to my channel, and I promise you, I made a promise to myself that we're going to be doing more videos in 2021. There's a bit of production time that's involved, but it's always a pleasure to do a video for you guys, and I welcome your comments. I'd love to hear from any of you watching this, what your thoughts are on the market, whether you think going forward we're going to see continued strength in real estate. I would have never predicted it a year ago, no way. But what it shows is that the low interest rates and the relatively good economy, despite everything else, despite the lockdowns, despite the layoffs, there's still strength there, and people love their houses. So I think that's going to continue going forward. So thanks again for coming back to my channel. I hope to talk to you again soon. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.